Hello guys, welcome again. The dim glow of the computer screen illuminated the room as Mark settled into his chair, ready for another late-night gaming session. The latest horror game had just been released, and he couldn't wait to immerse himself in its dark and eerie world. Little did he know that this night would be one he would never forget. As Mark booted up the game, the atmosphere in his room seemed to change. The air grew colder, and a sense of unease settled in his chest. Ignoring the eerie feeling, he shrugged it off as mere excitement. The game's menu appeared, and Mark eagerly clicked on the new game option. As soon as the game started, Mark was immediately drawn into its haunting narrative. The graphics were stunning, and the sound design sent chills down his spine. He navigated through dimly lit corridors, cautiously exploring every corner. The game's atmosphere was so immersive that Mark found himself jumping at the slightest sound. As the hours passed, Mark became more engrossed in the game, forgetting about the world outside his room. But then strange things began to happen. The sound effects became distorted, and he started hearing faint whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. He dismissed it as a clever game mechanic, designed to increase the tension. However, as Mark progressed further into the game, the line between reality and the virtual world began to blur. He noticed that objects in his room would occasionally disappear or move on their own. The whispers grew louder and more distinct, filling the room with an eerie presence. Mark's heart raced, and a sense of dread consumed him. Unable to shake off the unnerving experiences, Mark decided to take a break and step away from the game. But as he reached for the doorknob, he realized it wouldn't budge. Panic set in as he tugged harder, but the door remained stubbornly locked. A cold sweat dripped down his forehead as he desperately searched for his phone, only to find it missing. Feeling trapped and alone, Mark turned back to the game, hoping to find answers or escape from this nightmare. He was determined to unravel the mystery, but the game seemed to be playing tricks on him. The game's protagonist, a haunted character, mirrored his every move, as if taunting him. As Mark played on, the game's horrifying imagery began to seep into his mind. The lines between the game and reality blurred even further, and he found himself questioning his sanity. The room seemed to shrink, and shadows danced on the walls, taking grotesque forms. The whispers grew louder, their voices echoing in his head. Mark fought to stay focused, desperately trying to finish the game and break free from its clutches. But the game's challenges became increasingly difficult, testing his determination and mental fortitude. The scares intensified, and Mark's nerves were pushed to the breaking point. Hours turned into an eternity as Mark battled his way through the nightmarish landscape of the game. Sweat poured down his face, his hands trembled, but he pressed on, determined to reach the end. With every step, he could feel the malevolent presence closing in, suffocating him. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Mark reached the game's climax. The screen flickered, and the whispers grew deafening. The game's protagonist turned to face Mark, their eyes filled with a mix of malice and despair. Mark braced himself for the final confrontation, knowing that his fate hung in the balance. As the final scene played out, Mark's body went cold. The screen went black, and the room plunged into darkness. The whispers ceased, and an eerie silence settled over the room. Mark sat there, paralyzed with fear, unsure of what had just transpired. Slowly, the room began to regain its normalcy. The lights flickered back on, and Mark's racing heart started to calm. He blinked, trying to comprehend what had just happened. Was it all just a vivid nightmare induced by the game, or had he truly crossed into a realm where reality and the virtual world collided? Shaken but determined to find answers, Mark gathered his wits and cautiously exited the room. As he stepped into the hallway, he noticed that everything seemed to be in its right place. His phone was lying on the table, right where he had left it before starting the game. It was as if the eerie events had never occurred. Unsettled by the experience, Mark contacted the game's developers to report his strange encounter. To his surprise, they denied any knowledge of such anomalies and assured him that the game was thoroughly tested and free of glitches. They even offered him a refund, considering his disturbing experience. Mark accepted the refund but couldn't shake off the lingering sense of unease. The events of that night continued to haunt him, replaying in his mind like a chilling loop. He began researching similar incidents, desperate to find others who had encountered the same horrors. However, his search yielded no results. It was as if his ordeal was unique, trapped in the confines of his own memory. Haunted by the memories, Mark decided to retire from gaming altogether. The thought of immersing himself in virtual worlds no longer held the same appeal. He couldn't bear the thought of another encounter that would shatter his sense of reality. The once beloved hobby had become a source of terror, forever tarnished by that fateful night. Years passed, but the events of that night continued to cast a long shadow over Mark's life. The whispers, the distorted sounds, and the feeling of being watched lingered in the depths of his consciousness. He could never fully escape the horror that had consumed him. Today, Mark leads a quiet, reclusive life, avoiding anything that reminds him of that nightmarish gaming experience. The game itself became infamous, shrouded in urban legends and whispered cautionary tales. But for Mark, it was not just a game. It was a descent into a personal abyss, a harrowing journey that forever changed his perception of reality. And so, the gaming horror story ends, leaving behind a scar on Mark's soul and a chilling reminder that not all nightmares stay confined to the digital realm.